Hey guys, and welcome back to another Unreal Engine 4 tutorial. In today's video we're going to be advancing upon and continuing on with our options video which I made previously, so if you haven't watched part 1 of that I definitely go recommend watching that first. And in that what we did is we just set up the visuals of this screen you can see here. So all we've done is added any text and the buttons, so if you have something which looks like this already then you don't need to watch part 1, but if you don't have that then I would recommend watching that first, which again will be linked in the description down below. Today what we're going to be doing is setting up the functionality of all these, so when we actually press these buttons it is going to actually work, so we'll change all of these different settings which we want it to. And we'll also be setting up the optimal settings button as you can see down here. So without further ado, let's get right into this video. So the first thing we're going to want to do is open up our options menu widget, which again we created last time. So I'm going to open that here. This is what we have. I'm going to go straight into the event graph here. So the only code we'll have in here at the moment is our back button code, so we can now go back from the options to the main menu. So the first thing I want to do is set up the visuals of selecting a button. So when we select a button, we want that one to be kind of highlighted so the player knows that is the option they currently have selected and that's the one they're using. So to do that, I'm going to be utilizing functions and disabling the button. What you can do is set the custom style of the image on the button, but I'm just going to do it by disabling the button. That way it's also slightly more efficient because it means the player can't continually keep setting the same option over and over again. So what I'm going to do is create a plus function up here, naming this select window mode, because that is my first option as we can see here. I'm just doing it in order, it doesn't need to be, but it makes more sense for me. Then if we select the input of our function, you'll notice we can add inputs and outputs. We want to add in two inputs, so I'm going to hit the plus new parameter here, naming this one full screen, and I'm going to leave that as a boolean, so if it's full screen or not. I'm going to create another parameter naming this windowed, so we can choose if it's full screen or windowed based upon what the player inputs. Now in here what I want to do is get my full screen and windowed buttons, so I'm going to drag in my full screen button, so hold control, drag in to get it, and the same with my windowed button, should be down at the bottom here. Out of these I'm going to set is enabled, just connecting that into the function here, doing that for both of them like so. Now what we want to do is we just want to do the opposite of what they are. So if it's not full screen, we want to enable the full screen button. So out of full screen we're going to get a not boolean, connecting that into is enabled there. Then do the same for windowed. So we have windowed, not, dragging that into the set is enabled like so, and I'm just going to move these out a tiny bit to give us a bit more room like so. And again what we're doing here is if the user has selected full screen, this will be true, which means we want to disable this. So if that's true, the opposite is false. So is enabled false means it's disabled. So then if it's full screen it means it's not windowed, so this is false, which means that's true. So is enabled true, windowed button is enabled. So I hope that makes sense. The reason I'm doing enabling and disabling is because it does visually look different and it also acts different, so the player can't use it again because the button has been disabled. So we compile and save that, and we're essentially going to be doing this for all of the different options which we have here. So we don't need to do the display resolution, so the next one for me is the frame rate limit. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to duplicate this. So I'm going to right click on the function, duplicate, naming it to be select FPS button, like so. Then I'm just going to change the full screen button and windowed button to be 30 FPS, so I can just drag it on to change. Then 60 FPS. Then I want to duplicate these, so I have another two buttons, with this then being 120 FPS, and finally, last but not least, unlimited FPS. Should be down near the bottom, there we go, unlimited FPS button, like that. And we're going to do the same thing again. So we now want to change over the boolean inputs in here to be 30 FPS, 60 FPS, add in two new ones, renaming these to then also be 120 FPS and unlimited FPS. Again, dragging in the knots into them, so it just does the opposite of what the input actually is. So again, I hope this all makes sense to you. If it doesn't, just let me know in the comments down below. I believe I should have explained it properly, but I can always explain it in further detail if you need. So we'll compile and save that. And obviously this will also make a lot more sense once you actually see it working and see it in action. So now let's check what our next one is. Go to the designer, it's the view distance. So we'll duplicate this, right click, duplicate, and this should be a lot quicker to set up now as all of these are full options. So this one is now not FPS, but select view distance button. Then these are going to be near, medium, far, and epic. And again, just change over the buttons. So it's going to be VD near, VD medium, VD far, and VD epic. And that's all we need to do. It's now perfectly set up, although that one did set it, not change it. So let me just change it over. There we go. Compile and save. And then we'll do this again. So the next one now is the post-processing. Right-click, duplicate, select post-processing button, not view distance, and change them all over once again. And after this, again, it'll be much quicker because we won't need to change the inputs down here. So this will be the last time we change the inputs, then we'll just change the buttons. So this is now low, medium, high, and epic. I believe that's correct anyway. Let me just double check. Yes, it is. And then we just change the buttons. So this is now the post-processing. So we need to go to PP, low, medium, high, and epic. Compile, save. Next one is anti-aliasing. So duplicate it. Like I said in the previous video, a lot of these are going to be very repetitive tasks. You do it once, then you know what you're doing. So duplicate, and this was anti-aliasing. So change this name to be anti-aliasing, and there's also so many different ways of doing this, but this is just the way which I personally prefer to do it, especially for a simple basic system, one which we don't need a lot of different images changing on the buttons. So he's now AA right at the top, very easy, AA low, AA medium, AA high, and AA epic. Compile, save. Next one is text quality, then we've got one more after this, so duplicate, change this to be text quality, and then change the buttons over for our TQ. So texture, quality, TQ should be down near the bottom, here we go, TQ low, TQ medium, TQ high, and TQ epic, and then finally, last but not least, it should be shadow quality, I believe. Yes, it is, so we will right click, duplicate the shadow quality button, and then we should be done for this section. So SQ buttons down here again, SQ low, SQ medium, SQ high, and SQ epic. Compile, save that, and we can close all these functions as that's all we need to do in them. We'll call them later on, where we'll then do the code for that. So that's the first part, and a very repetitive part, firstly set up. So now let's actually do the functionality of changing the graphics, the most exciting part of the video. So let's start off with the viewing mode. Again, I'm just going to do it in this order here. So viewing mode, what we need first is the buttons. So let's find them. We've got full screen button, on clicked, windowed button, on clicked. So again, select them and choose the appropriate button for them. Then what we're going to be doing for this is we're going to be getting the game user settings. So drag out of the full screen button and get game user settings. And this is a much more efficient way of doing it over console commands. Out of the return value, we're going to set full screen mode, and the in full screen mode will be full screen. And that's it. This is what I mean by it's a lot more efficient and also a lot easier. That's all we need to do. You don't have to remember a really long console command. It's just this. Now, what I also want to do is apply the settings straight away. You might want to do this on a button, but I want to do it here. So out of the return value of the get game user settings, I'm going to apply settings like so. We don't want to check for command line override, so untick that there. And again, if you want to do this on a separate button, then just get a button, get the game user settings, and apply settings, and don't do it here. It's that simple. Then after this, we're going to call our function we just created. So for me, that is select window mode. And for this one, I want to tick full screen and make sure windowed is false. So again, full screen is selected, windowed is not, so that will change the appropriate buttons. Then we're going to select all this, Control-C, Control-V to duplicate it down here, and just change it over to be windowed mode. So in full screen is now windowed, and you can see you can also do windowed full screen if you wanted as well, but I don't want to. And then select window mode is now windowed instead of full screen. It's that simple, so I hope that will make sense to you. I'm then going to select this, hit C to comment it, naming it viewing mode, so we know what this does. Next is the FPS cap. So again, I'm going to find the buttons. So they should be at the top. It's got 30 FPS, 60 FPS, 120 FPS, and unlimited, which is near the bottom. There we go. Once again, a very simple and similar process. So get game user settings, and all we need to do, return value, set frame rate limit. Once again, Very, very simple. And in here, you just input the limit that you want. So for me, the first one is going to be 30, as that's what this button does. Then apply settings once again, very repetitive, very easy to understand. Untick that. And we want to again use our function that we created for the buttons, and that is set FPS. What do I call the function? Select, not set, there we go. Select FPS button, there we go. And this one is 30 FPS there. So nice and simple. Copy and paste all this down here, changing it over to be 60 FPS instead of 30. So this one is now 60, and this one is also 60. I'm also just going to move all these down one, just to give us a bit more space, like this. Copy and paste it, do the same process over and over again. So this one is now 120 FPS, 120 FPS, and this one will be unlimited FPS. So how do we get unlimited FPS in our set frame rate limit? We just leave it at 0. If you hover over the new limit, you'll notice, or hover over the button, okay, sometimes it says it, sometimes it doesn't, but essentially if we leave it at 0, then what's going to happen is it will stay unlimited, so there's no limit. So there we go. So if you hover over this bit, set the user's frame rate limit, 0 will be disable frame rate limiting. And down here, this wants to be unlimited, like so. So perfect. Now we're going to select all this, and this is FPS limit. Perfect. Although actually I have forgotten one. The FPS limit wasn't next, it was the resolution. So let's set that one up now. I'm going to move this down a bit. I'm going to do that next, that it's here. So the resolution. So what we need to do for that is actually slightly different. So we need to select our combo box, and for this we're going to be using the onSelectionChanged event, which we have here. I'll track this up here, like so. So now we notice it's actually returning a string. So how do we change the string into a screen resolution? Well, firstly, let's actually set the resolution. So we'll drag out of this, get game user settings, then it will be set screen resolution, and then obviously apply settings, like so. And again, we don't need to do a function for the button because it does it automatically for us. So this resolution here, how are we going to be setting this? It's an int point structure. So what we can do is drag out of this and make endpoint. And now you'll notice we have an x and y integer value. So the x is obviously 1920, y is 1080, just for example. So how do we get that from this string? Well, if we drag out the selected item, what we can do is split. So we're going to be splitting this string. The in string, we're going to write x. So it's going to be splitting the string on either case of the x, because again, you'll notice how I've done mine is if I select it, we've got 1920 x 1080. So in here, where it detects the x, it's going to split it on the left and right. So you notice we have left string and right string. Left will be 1920, right will be 1080. Search case, you can ignore case or be case sensitive if you want, but you may as well just ignore it. Search directory, you'll want to do it from the start. Then we can just drag these in. So left S will go into X, right S will go into Y. It is as easy as that. Nice and simply done for us. And also we want to make sure we untick that there for the check for command line override. Again, it's that simple. We've now got it done for setting the resolution. So we can select all that, C to comment it, and change resolution. So we know what this does. I'll just move that over a little bit. So perfect. Compile and save that. And now the next one should be view distance. So if you find our view distance buttons, it should be under VD here. So VD near, VD medium, VD far, and VD epic. Move these over here, like so. Now, once again, get game user settings, then, as you might have guessed, set view distance quality. And you'll notice this is giving us an integer value. It's not an enum, so we can't choose near, medium, far, or epic. It's just giving us a value. However, if we hover over it once again, you'll notice 0 to 4, the higher the better. Now this is the same as it is in the console commands, so if you know how to do it via console commands, you know what you're doing here, but essentially 0 is near, 1 is medium, 3 is far, 4 is epic. So it's very simple to remember, the lower, the worse, the higher, the better. So for the first one, I'm going to leave it at 0. Then we want to apply settings, and we also want to do our function for setting the button. So that is select view distance button, like so, leaving it as near. Copy and paste all this down here. And this one is now 1 and medium. Paste it again, This one will be 2 and far. And last but not least will be 3 and epic. I believe that's correct anyway. So I think earlier when I said it, I actually miscounted it. So sorry, that's my bad. 0 near, 1 medium, 2 far, 3 epic, 4 I believe will be ultra, which again I mentioned in the previous video, but I'm not going to be doing that. But it's the same thing, you just add in another button and do ultra if that's what you wanted. Then I'm going to select all this, comment it, naming this view distance, like so. So this might be a bit of a boring video for you because again it's repetitive, but it gets the job done and it works nicely. So now let's move on to the post-processing. So that should be PP. Here we go, PP low, medium, high, and epic. And the same thing we just did with the view distance. It's the same, so it will be a number system. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Or for us, just 0, 1, 2, 3. So out of low, get game user settings. Then set post-processing quality. Again, you see it's just a value there. First one will be 0. Then apply settings, unticking that, and calling our function of select post-processing button, having that one as low. So again, the numbering value here is the exact same for all of them now, so it goes from 0 to 4, the higher the better, so I don't need to explain it every time, as you know what it does. Copy and paste this down here, setting this one to be 1 and medium, pasting again down here to be 2 and high, and one final time to be 3 and epic, like so. Simple as that. This one will comment to be post-processing. Compile and save. Now this one next is anti-aliasing, so that's AA right at the top, AA low, AA medium, AA high, and AA epic. Move them over into the space which we want, and do the exact same process once again. So get game user settings. Out of this, we're going to set the anti-aliasing quality 0 to 4. So the first one will be 0. Apply settings, unticking this here, and then our select anti-aliasing button, like so, setting it to low to start with. Then a simple copy and paste and change over the values. So this one will be 1, medium, 2, and high, and then finally, last but not least, 3 and epic. Select all that, hit C to comment it, and name it anti-aliasing, like so. Only 2 more left to go, and then the optimal settings as well. So this time now it's the texture quality, so that's TQ, low, medium, high, and epic. Move them into place. Then get game user settings. Out of this, what we're going to do is set the texture quality 0 to 4, leaving this one at 0. Apply settings, unticking check for command line override, because we don't need to be doing that. Then select texture quality button. This one is going to be low. Simple copy and paste, change over the values. This one will be 1 and medium. Do it again. This one will be 2 and high. And this final one will be 3 and epic. And I'm going to move these all over to the left a little bit, and I've given it a bit too much space. There we go. Select, comment, texture, quality. So sorry if it seems like I'm rushing through these a little bit. It's just obviously the exact same process, so you know what you're doing. I don't need to explain it too much. And again, very repetitive. I just want to get through it for you to get onto the next section of the code. But I don't want to cut this out because I do still want to be showing you what I'm doing. And then finally, last but not least, it's the shadow quality, which is SQ, low, medium, high, and epic. Move them into space. Get the game user settings. If I could spell it correctly, there we go. Get game user settings. Set shadow quality 0 to 4, first one being 0. Apply settings, making sure to come out of the return value of the get game user settings. Unticking that. Then select shadow quality button, like so, with the first one being low. Duplicate it, changing over the values to what we need. First one being 1 and medium. Then we've got 2 and high. And then we've got 3 epic. Comment this for the last time, naming this shadow quality. Now we will compile and save that. And that is now all of the graphics options done and set for us. You see we've got all of these here that we can change. The last thing I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to set up the optimal settings. So the player's PC will actually decide what the best settings for them are. And this will also be unique and dynamic for each player's system. So this is actually a lot more simple than you might expect, which is why I love the game user settings. Everything is so easy. So if we find our button for the optimal settings, I believe I just called it optimal button, here we are. Get the on-clicked event, I'm going to move it up here, just so it's easier to find. Then out of this, we're going to get game user settings, as you may have guessed. Then out of this, what we're going to do is a simple run hardware benchmark. You can leave all these the same, so work scale of 1, CPU multiplier and GPU multiplier also at 1. Then as the return value of the get game user settings, we want to apply hardware benchmark results, like so. Now this isn't going to update the visuals of the buttons, but that is something I will do in the next video, which will be a saving and loading of our options. But this at the moment will still work perfectly. So if we comment this, we can find and use optimal settings for players system, like so. We can compile, save, and close this, and this should now be working perfectly for us. So you'll notice it's in 1280 by 720. I go to the options, I can change it to 1920 by 1080, and it has updated that once it loads in. There we go. And I can also make sure it is full screen, and you'll see full screen is now selected. I can change my frame rate limit like so. So if I actually show FPS, I believe it's called, or not, or is it just stats? In actual fact, I think it's just stat FPS. There we go. So you notice on the right, I'm getting 30, I believe that is. If I change it to 60, we've now gone up to 60. 120, I do get, so we've got 120. Then unlimited is going up to about 180, 170. Not got the best system, but you'll notice that is capping the FPS there. And I can change our view distance here. We obviously won't notice it too much, but if I put them all on the lowest settings, and let's cap it at 30 FPS, we'll go back, we start our game, you'll notice the game now looks terrible and is running at 30 FPS because it's on the lowest possible settings. Now if I were to go back into the main menu and change them to the highest possible settings, we should see it looking a lot nicer. So you can also see when it's Windows mode, it's like this. Full screen will do full screen, however the resolution will be horrible, like this. Actually, I've just noticed on my recording that stayed the same resolution, but for me, on your actual monitor, it's full screen. If I change to 1920 by 1080, once this loads, you'll notice it is proper full screen like this. So let me again put this on an unlimited FPS, highest possible settings. Let me enable my FPS once again. There we go back, start the game, and you'll see it looks a lot nicer, and I'm running around 100 FPS, as you can see here. So this works perfectly for us. So I think that'll be it for this video, as we've done everything we want to do. We've set up a graphics and options menu in which we can change all the different graphics which we want. As you can see here, and the visuals will update as well, so the player knows what it actually is. And again, in the next video, what I'm going to be doing is going over actually how to save and load these settings as well, which is probably a lot simpler than you're expecting it to be. And again, you can also see the optimal settings. What it's doing is it's loading there. It's now set them. Obviously, the visuals haven't changed here, but it will have changed in-game. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and hope you found it helpful. And if you did, make sure to like and subscribe down below. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.